All right. I got the mighty and legendary Andrew from Popular Liberty on today. He's a guy that I have grown to tremendously respect and really appreciate his view and take on things. I'm sure, as with most libertarians, we were kind of scratching our heads at this whole post libertarian moment. But I think I might be one of the only guys that kind of said, well, let's hear them out, because after 2020, if you aren't questioning your basic libertarian assumptions, then I think you might be stuck in, La La Land and, in Ancapistan rather than in reality. So, Andrew, quick, give a introduction to yourself and kind of how you got to where you're at now.
Oh, that's not a short story. But my introduction to libertarianism was actually through John Stossel. Not Ron Paul, because
Okay.
I'm a little young. So that's like I was kind of in like early high school when Ron Paul was doing his thing. Peace be upon him. He's a great guy, but he was not my original influence. And I was initially drawn to it because, I saw, how logical and consistent it was. And, and over time, I, began to, I always had a Christian background. And that was like where it came from, was that, this is logical and consistent. The God I worship is logical and consistent. And, and these ideas really dovetail well with how I was raised as a Roman Catholic. And, over the past, 5 years since I became 5 years ago, I became an ANCAP. And, and I've been, slowly harmonizing all of the idiosyncrasies of both my Roman Catholicism and my anarcho-capitalism. And I came away with like, okay, the ANCAP model does not work, but the ideas and the philosophy behind it are pretty good, and there's a lot there that needs to be salvaged and brought into a more a framework that is a lot more consistent with reality. Mm-hmm. And one of those major, contributions is like the Archotropism framework, which is, my version of economics that, okay, this is, you did really, really well on the free market side of the economics equation of how does a market work without a state. And okay, except that but if you're going to call this a science, okay, well, why does reality not reflect your science?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a obviously logical question every Austrian should be asking. Mm-hmm. And they don't want to do that. And right. And the reason is, okay, because the state is not a part, the state is not separate from economics. It is economics. It's just a non-free market kind of economics. And so, okay, well, we need to understand this. We need to, start really, going into the praxeology of why this thing works the way it does. And this was my first major contribution was, okay, we need a consistent, a theory of Austrian economics that actually reflects both the free market and the state, because it's like they want to say that, okay, Bob Murphy is like an economist, and he is, but so is Genghis Khan.
That's a pretty brutal comparison.
Granted, I tend to prefer the Bob Murphy to the Genghis, but I can't not notice that they're both using this value maximizing behavior. It's just one is a positive sum sort version of value maximization, that would be the Bob Murphy kind, and the other is a zero sum, which is the Genghis Khan sum.
In case that wasn't clear.
It's like both of them exist.
Yeah.
And we need to be kind of clear-eyed about this, that the state is not like opposed to economics. This thing is economics. Right. And this is like where I started to make people very, very unhappy, because now you're starting to burst a lot of bubbles, and a lot of the ways they say reality can work is just not true. A lot of libertarian dogma, just from just an Austrian economics point of view, is just not true. It's just there's Austrian economics, which is like definitely true, and then above it there's like libertarian dogmas. There are conclusions of Austrian economics, but it's in conclusions of an incomplete version. So wherever there is an incomplete part, that's where they got it wrong, and that's where I've started to have to like step on some tails, so to speak.
Right. So you kind of I guess the post-libertarian moment kind of arose. To me, it seemed like late 2020 because all the stuff we were dealing with, and a lot of people kind of had the moment of, oh shit. So just sitting here and screaming that this isn't consistent and these people are hypocrites doesn't seem to do anything, because eventually you find out, well, these people don't care about that, right? They care about power. They care about maintaining their empire. So how do we address this? Because once again, just
you cut out through like all of that. You just cut out through all of that where you were like, oh shoot, I forgot where you were.
No, that's all right. Just kind of people. It seems like in 2020, people kind of figured out that just saying these people aren't being consistent is not rolling back the state. So we need to find solutions. And I kind of was one of these people there for a little bit, but then honestly, Tho Bishop, you, Matt, and some of the other guys in this kind of post-libertarian GOP kind of sphere had kind of broke my brain a little bit and kind of made me second guess my assumptions and kind of have to rearrange the way I think about things. So I've been very open-minded to you guys. And it seems like a lot of libertarians, when you shake the golden tree of the nap and the proper libertarian dogma, then a lot of apples fall out, and those apples are pretty pissed off. They're being shook out of the tree. But I feel like it was a tree that needed to be shook, and that those apples had to come down to reality and figure out, okay, well, if we believe all this stuff, how do we get there? We can't just sit here and read on Twitter and read on podcasts. We have to actually go out and do something. And it seems like you have kind of proposed a solution that some people like and some people don't like.
It's not a lot of this stuff is not even like original to us. It's like, we can like cite Rothbard, we can cite Hoppe, we can cite Mises saying a lot of the same stuff. Right. And they just like, no, I don't want to hear it. And and what it's come down to is like it really is not, it's not just that that it happened in 2020. It's the reason why it happened in 2020. Because if you go back to like the Ron Paul era, which was like 2008 to 2012, a lot the people who are libertarians now, most of them were like in college or very young adults at the time. So fast forward about 8 years, and about 8 years. And what you get is, okay, they're about 8 years older. They're in their like late 20s to early 30s now. And this is where we got basically our entire base of support for like, Pete, Matt, me, our entire base of support. They're not the younger guys. They're the older guys. And because they've been around long enough to notice a few things, that a lot of the libertarian dogmas that, Pete and, Matt and I all take shots at, they actually need to be shot at because they don't work at all. Right. And so it's not simply that, 2020 was just a clusterfuck of a year. It was also that there's a lot of guys, that I had just been talking to for a long time. And they were all like having the same exact viewpoints at the same time, because we're all, aging at the same time. We're all coming of that age. And I've noticed, distinctly, we've all noticed it, that the people who are our biggest detractors, by and large, are young. They're by and large much younger. They're like, early 20s or teens. And that is just like, these people have not been around long enough to notice that, okay, yeah, just because you've reasoned it out in your head doesn't mean it actually works that way. And doesn't mean the value structure is actually that way. Doesn't mean human nature actually works that way. And that they haven't lived long enough to understand that, like, hey, this like blank slateism, tabula rasa, this individualism, all that stuff does not work at all. This is completely counterproductive to everything you want, you say you want. And so when we're having this, like, we're calling it the post-libertarian moment now. The post-libertarian moment happens, kind of in your mid to late 20s. And this is what, and this is, by the way, this is not new. This has been around for quite a while. This is why people start off, young people start off a little more to the left, and they just have a very idealistic view of reality. And then as they go, because again, they've reasoned it all out and the reasoning makes sense. And that's just not how it worked. This is like the brilliance of the scientific method the Catholic Church invented 800 years ago, was that, hey, we're actually going to check our results. Can you imagine that? Like this
Yeah.
idea that, okay, we're going to have our first principles, we're going to have our hypothesis and our theory, and then we're going to test it. Then we're actually going to design experiments around it and test it against reality to see if it's true. And lo and behold, a lot of the stuff just isn't true. Like if you look at like Aristotle, he was a really big Greek philosopher. He had a whole thing of physics, a whole book of physics where he had reasoned out, a priori reasoning from the law of causation all the way through how does a rock move, et cetera. It was based on just first principles logic. It was perfectly logically consistent, except that it didn't work at all. And this is just completely garbage physics. And the Catholic Church was like, well, maybe we should just like test it and test our first principles, test our theories to see if they are corresponding to reality. And it seems like we've kind of gone backwards a little bit, at least as libertarians, where we started to reject the idea that we actually should test our hypotheses and see if they're correct. We should test our dogmas and subject them to actual real world tests. And turns out a lot of them are just wrong because guess what? The problem, the risk of a first principles only morality is that your first principles are either wrong or incomplete. And incomplete is much more likely because there's a universe of principles out there and how do you know you got all of them? You need to have all of them to be right. And so if you're just starting with you and myself, that might not be correct. That might not be a good starting point. And when you've grown up, you start to, you're less idealistic. And because you started to notice the things that do not work, and you start to, and really when you start to having kids and you start having a wife, particularly, things need to work. It's like you can't just say, honey, well, I lost my job, but I was perfectly principled. That's not going to work. It's like in your value, and it, and your values change because of that, because all of a sudden that, making things work, making civilization last, making sure that your kid is not being like told to cut his balls off. That really matters all of a sudden when you start to get older. And so that and they realize this, and this is why a lot, there is as much as we like to say, there's like a libertarian to alt-right pipeline. What there really is a libertarian to conservative pipeline. Just like straight up boomer conservative. It's like a lot of those people, they started off as like, libertarians and Rothbardians and all that. And, and they kept a lot of this, their same beliefs, but a lot of them, they're just like, okay, a lot of that social stuff just does not work. Even if you're like right about morally correct or logically correct, I don't think they're morally correct. I think they're logically correct, correct from their, within their worldview. But, as far as reality is, the rest of reality is concerned, they're just like in la la land. Like, this is not how humans work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really like that you dug into the social thing there, because that seems to be absent even amongst, I want to say like more right-leaning people. So like the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, right? Although I'm somewhat of an activist in there, they don't address culture that much, and they kind of abstain from kind of going there. But really, I think that's perhaps one of the more important things, because if you don't have strong families, right, and you're not capable of being responsible for your own actions, then what does freedom look like down the line if you don't have respect for, basic or, your own property rights, right? Or respect for your family, or, being responsible for yourself. If you're not willing to do that, then how are you going to tolerate, this full freedom that you think you're owed because, you're a libertarian and this is what your first principles lead you to? Well, if you don't have, once again, a correct social order that basically ensures that this can be achieved, then that's not going to be sustainable. So that's why I harp on, I used to kind of reject this whole right-wing thing, but the more and more I've heard, guys like you, Mackenzie from, Kenzie Puff, she does
the Hoppian.
Yeah. When I heard everybody saying right-wing, I'm like, well, it depends on how you define right-wing, because most people are going to think right-wing and they're going to think like George Bush, Charlie Kirk, Ben Shapiro. But when you just lay it out as left-wing being egalitarianism and right-wing being respect for hierarchy, then I'm in agreement. I would consider myself right-wing that way, because obviously there's a hierarchy of values and there's a hierarchy of just people in general, because there's going to be certain things that you're good at that your wife's not good at. And there's certain things that your wife's good at that you're not good at. and we respect those hierarchies because we understand that we all have abilities as individuals, but though we all contribute to, a somewhat of a collective, right? If you're the father, then you have certain fatherly duties. The mother has certainly motherly duties, and you both take care of your family unit, which is considered a collective.
Yeah. And it really seems like that, with again, like in the Mises Caucus, the LP Mises Caucus. Hi, I'm the founder of the GOP Mises Caucus, and just want to put that out there. But in the LP Mises Caucus, it seems like a lot of them are kind of like in that former boat where there are a lot of younger guys, and this is why they seem to have this idealism to them, and this is also why I'm confident that I need to stick around, because those guys are going to grow up, and I'll be here waiting. And and having made that same message this entire time, I know it's going to wear on them, because you can't not see it as you grow up. And unless you're in the LP, I mean, those guys are. Rothbard didn't call it the world's biggest outpatient clinic, for no reason. And and it is like, hey, like you're avoiding these cultural issues because you think they're just distractions. And I was trying to make the point to them the other day that these are not the distractions. These are the front line in the war for liberty. And that's what they haven't quite been. They're not old enough to realize it yet, that, these are not, like these cultural issues. Yes, the state has a benefit in it, that it keeps us fighting with each other instead of them. But there's also the benefit that every time they win, that the left wins one of these cultural issues, they get more powerful. Yeah, the state gets more powerful because of this process I talked about called archotropism.
Okay, go ahead and lay that out a little bit. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah.
Well, but why is it that the state has an incentive to seed chaos? And we notice this all over the place. The reason is that the most essential biological function of any kind of life is to push out chaos and keep energy in and order it. Basically, the essential function of life is to apply force to chaos to get order. That is the most essential. You die if you do not do this on a cellular level. Down even like the smallest bacteriums all do this. So what is the state doing? This is the same exact biological process. You apply force to chaos in order to get power. Basically, this is they get power. This is their power. This is how they derive their power. That they have an incentive, therefore, to seed chaos for that. Because if they promise to, they're like, hey, if you allow us to use the force, if you allow us to, you give us power, we will put down the chaos, and give you and restore order for you. The problem is it's a fraud. So they still get the power, but they never give it back, and they never give you the order. And therefore it's just a continuous cycle of chaos, power, order, chaos, power, order, chaos, power, order, except you don't really get the order. It's you get defrauded over and over and over again. So and again, this is down to like the biological level where humans are programmed to do this. We are still we're not unicellular life, but we are humans and we can consciously choose this. So anytime chaos breaks out, and by the way, that's not just a panic. That's anything down to like, you had a child out of wedlock. That's chaos. That demands that power be used against it in order to restore order. So it's like, and you see this like, okay, how does this work in the child out of wedlock situation? Well, usually what happens is, okay, you have the state will go after the dad and say, hey, you need to pay them child support.
Yes.
And also we're going to go after all of the other taxpayers and give the mother welfare, et cetera, et cetera. And so, and they will promise to restore order to help the needy, to help whatever, help to restore order to the chaos. All you have to do is give them power. And what do? They always make it worse because that's their incentive. So when you are looking at these cultural issues, one side wants chaos, the other side wants order. The right is the one that wants order. And the left is trying to see, and the left is here trying to help the state perpetrate the fraud. It's like you need to look at every single cultural war issue through it, that the left is team state. The right is team anti-state. They're team liberty, because if you apply the order, the power goes away. The power that you no longer need it. And so so if when you're avoiding these cultural issues, what you're really saying is, I don't want to fight the war at the front line. This is the like what's going on with like kids in, like being propagandized with like sexual propaganda in schools. Like this, it's not just that this is an aggression, is that this is an attempt for them to seed chaos and seed mental illness later in life for these people. And that mental illness, that chaos, is going to demand power be used against it, which is another opportunity for the state to perpetrate its fraud and continue its fraud on the American people and gain more power. So anytime there's chaos, you need to be, anytime the left is trying to win a cultural battle, you need to be looking at this as they're helping the state become more powerful every time, no exceptions.
Yeah, and you definitely see that within public schools, because what do? They teach them to be victims. And when you're a victim, it's essentially a chaotic situation, right? You're a victim of chaos and circumstance. So therefore, you need someone to come rein this in and give it order, right? Which is going to be the big daddy government that's going to rein in whatever situation it is. But once again, like you said, it's defrauded constantly. So you look.
Look at the Austrian business cycle, where the Fed prints money and they juice up the economy. The crash comes, and what do? We need a lot more juice, and you need to give us more power so we can bail out our banker buddies. And then you go like, when COVID happened, what happened? You had a mother of all panics, and then what did you get? The mother of all power grabs. But first, it's like, oh my God, there's a deadly disease coming! Quick, bail out the bankers. Like that was their first thing, is that they recognized that nobody was paying attention. Everyone's panicking. This is a chance to shovel some money to their buddies, and of course. And what do? It's like, okay, now we're going to have lockdowns, and we're going to and everyone's going to lose their job. We're going to cut the global GDP in half, and then we're going to give you like a $1,200 check, which is basically minimum wage. That was how they calculated it, is that 40 hours, multiply that by a minimum wage, and you get roughly 1,200. That was where that money came. That was where that came from.
Right.
They gave us minimum wage. They bought us off for minimum wage. That was how they did that.
It's literally like the dollar in the commercials on the fishing rod. It's just enough to kind of get you by a little bit. But though it's once again, it keeps you running back to that order. So you're asking for it at this point. Yeah. And it incentivizes both sides. It's literally like a perfect storm, because they're going to say, look, we're going to be,
we need to give the state more power so they can save us, so they can restore order, so they can put down the chaos. This is how they defraud. This is the exact mechanism that is we're biologically programmed to do this. So there's no getting rid of it. There's no getting rid of this mechanism. It's never going away. This is an essential biological function that you're seeing played out on a human scale, and or on the scale of human civilization. This is not going away. And there is no possibility of that. So let's just dispense with that and look at these cultural issues the proper way, from the right wing point of view, that we need to restore order, and chaos demands to be put down with force. So when you see the left, doing their culture war thing, you need to be thinking to yourself as a libertarian, how do I apply force to these people?
Right.
In order to put down the chaos.
We're constantly,
because that's what gives you liberty.
We're constantly trying to play defense. And even a lot of the Republicans in kind of government right now kind of do this, where the left does not care for rules, right? They will go for the jugular every single time. And then while the right's sitting there bleeding out and holding their neck, they're saying, but you just, you didn't follow.
This is unprincipled.
Right. This is unprincipled. We can't, what are we supposed to do? Disobey our principles? Well, eventually you got to say, well, if this isn't working, then eventually we got to go on offense. And it may not be perfectly libertarian, but at what point do you say,
no, it really should be
justify the ends? It
really should be perfectly principled, because it's like you've noticed that this is a fraud that they perpetrate every time. We know how they do it, and that you see them setting up for the fraud, and you should see this as they're initiating aggression, like even under the non-aggression principle. Which is, I have such a poor opinion of it, not because of what it says, but because of, how people apply it, how libertarians particularly apply it.
They neuter themselves with it.
Yeah, it's like they use it as a straitjacket, when really this should be like, all right, they just they violate it. Now take the gloves off. It's like it's like I've been ready to take the gloves off of them since like 2018, 2019. And it took until 2020 for a lot of other people to be like, all right, time to take the gloves off. But now we've got a substantial number of defectors from the LPMC and just right wingers in general who are like, we're ready to take the gloves off with the left. We're done. We don't care about our libertarian principles or our conservative principles, because conservatives like Mitt Romney have their exact it's like, no, they have their analogs in the libertarian movement as well, because libertarians are right wingers according to my framework. That you have the equivalent of like a Mitt Romney who's like, our conservative principles must never be violated. Like we have those same exact people. I'm not going to name names like Ace, but who in our movement that want to use our principles as a straitjacket because of logical consistency or principled virtue or whatever. It's like, I don't regard that as moral. I do not, because, again, as a Roman Catholic, I believe that, consequences play a part in morality. It's not a consequentialist, a viewpoint. It is that first principles are important. So are consequences. Virtually everyone throughout time has agreed with that. Is really just radical libertarians and radical moderate conservatives, radical moderates who are really not conservative. They're leftists who are, designed to subvert the right. Like, these are the only people who say, nope, first principles only. If you get a bad consequence, that's fine. Like that's moral. I'm like, no, that is not moral at all. That is completely unjust, because the idea is I build my system through first principles. Yes. But when those are violated, now that steps out of that into justice, and justice can reapply order.
Right. Oh, God.
You can think of, in the chaos power order dynamic, you can think of that as, sin demands justice to restore love. Because that there was a crime demands punishment to restore order. And the goal of justice is to restore order, and that's how that this was just and how or was unjust. That's also how you measure what is a more just solution than a less just solution, because a more just solution restores more order than a less just solution, and it gives you a pretty objective measurement. Well, not quite. You don't quite have a metric for it, but you can qualify it, right? You can say, order looks like this. This solution gets us closer to order through its result than than another one. And this is where I can say this is the most just solution to whatever crime has been perpetrated, because crime is chaos.
Right. So one thing that kind of stood with me, I remember, I think you and Pete were talking about something, and this was kind of when Pete was first, I think, kind of walking into the post-libertarian moment. And he said, I don't know what we're doing other than just sitting here being right. And I pondered that for quite a while. And I came to realize that people who are voting libertarian, and I have for the last 2 election cycles, but you look at it, and it's like a no-lose situation for the libertarian, right? Because you could say, well, look, I didn't vote for any of this. If you all would have just voted for Jo Jorgensen, then we wouldn't be in this situation. But that not everybody's going to vote for her. So you don't win, but you can claim the moral high ground without actually having to put any skin in the game, because it's never going to happen. But you can just say, oh yeah, well, I stuck to my principles and I, swiped L all the way down the ticket.
In Catholicism, we call that the cardinal vice of sloth, laziness. Yeah, that we call that sloth. That's where that we would call that chaos. That's how And again, this is if you're coming in with a Christian framework, things make a lot more sense a lot more quickly, particularly when it comes to libertarianism.
Sure, that's interesting that you go to religion, because I consider myself an agnostic theist. I kind of err on the side that there probably is a God, but it's not something I really think about all that much. And kind of when I start talking about religion, I feel more inclined to be a believer, but it's not something that I dig up.
If you keep going down this rabbit hole, you're going to end up probably Catholic or Orthodox, one of the two. Well, because this is where it all comes from. There's only a handful of like religions out there that really make sense of reality. and Christianity's at the top of that list, and Catholicism is kind of the 800-pound gorilla in that respect. And then you have the next biggest, by smaller by about a factor of 6 is orthodoxy. And it's like, you're going to end up one of the two, because these are the only two fully comprehensive frameworks for understanding reality. And if you keep digging, you're going to end up back there the same way I did, because it's like, hey, monarcho-capitalism is kind of just the political, as I call it, instead of anarcho-capitalism, monarcho-capitalism. It's functional. They're functionally identical, except for a few minor tweaks. But, if you go down like that route, this is basically just the Catholic version of libertarianism. Whereas like libertarianism is, default Protestant. Austrian economics and all that, this is all default Protestant. It descends directly from the Protestant tradition. And here's the monarcho-capitalism or whatever this post-libertarian thing is. These are attempts at forming the Catholic equivalent of it.
Right.
If you're seeing this stuff right now, it's like, and you're trying to make sense of it. I'm going to give you the answer right now. It's like, the answers are like over there. It's like, you need to keep digging deeper. Go back in time. You don't just go back to 1776. You need to go back to the Reformation. You need to go back prior to the Reformation, and you need to go back all the way to like the 1st century AD. And then you need to go all the way back to like 6000 BC, and then back to like 12,900 BC. And you start to and the further you go back in time, the more the Christian and the Catholic particularly point of view really, really makes sense, because and you can really tell quickly who's familiar with human history and who isn't by their opinion of human nature. And you see that how incredibly delicate and fragile human civilization is because of that. That right. Human nature is not. This is not good at all. And so how you get from barbarianism, absolute barbarianism, to where we are today talking over Zoom, like, this is extraordinarily difficult.
Right.
This is like a walk on someone's walking on water miracle. Like, if you rewind to ancient Rome, and you tell people in the future that you're going to be able to communicate at the speed of light across vast distances, and we're going to have, if you start describing civilization like this today, they would sooner believe that that God became man and walked on water.
Right.
And he was resurrected from the dead. That is a far more believable story than that human civilization is going to end up like this, because we believe in the guy who walked on water and all that. It's like that. It's like that single belief that carries through and builds all of human civilization. Great book. I do not. Oh, yes, I do. How the Catholic Church Built Western Civilization by Tom Woods. This is an excellent book because it takes you all the way back to the first few centuries of where we were as a civilization and how utterly screwed we were. And then the Catholic Church comes along and basically builds this thing from the ground up. Like, when we started, it was like both sides. You can have Romans and barbarians, and both sides agree that mass murderer is the most noble, occupation you can aspire to. And I was like general and warmonger and warrior. Both sides agreed that was the apex. That's the best kind of person you can be, as a mass murderer. And that's where we started. We've had some major improvements. We don't quite believe that anymore. We're like, no, now it's like a CEO of a company or something like that. Major improvements.
Right.
And by the way, where we had been there for hundreds of thousands of years. That had been unchanged. So the idea that we're going to make, changes, that you get one institution that changes all of human history, it's like, I want to know everything about that. You know what I mean? It's like, because clearly that worked really, really well. And then when, you get to like the Reformation and, you get Protestantism starts to take over, like, and things start to degenerate again, and we start moving backwards. We start moving forwards at a much slower pace, but eventually we start around the 20th century, we start moving backwards. And so it's like, for me, I would want to know everything about that. Like, however we got here, I would love to know everything about the institution that did that, because, it's like they clearly they were on to something. And so if I'm going to be, looking at, where we're going, and figuring out how do we stop the damage? How do we stop the bleeding? How do we stop losing our liberty? I'd want to understand the source of the problem first. And that might not be a modern problem. It might go back centuries, and it does.
Right. And, we kind of see this even like the health and fitness space, where a lot of people kind of want to, your high cholesterol isn't from lack of a statin, right? This is from underlying health issues, but we'll prescribe you a statin. And
call it Fiat food.
Right. So, we can, fix the economy by lowering interest rates a little bit more and by throwing everybody money and bailing out bankers. We can fix your health by giving you a statin. We can do all these different things that kind of tape over the actual damage, but we're not saying, hey, you actually need to lose some weight and eat some real food, or you need to let interest rates go up so that way people start spending like drunken sailors and let bad debt default. That's more the root of the problem, rather than just, saying, okay, well, let's push interest rates lower and tape over what's ugly.
Yeah. And you can think of that in your mental health too, that if you are, like, if all you do is go into debt, you don't save money, it's like, you're going to have crippling anxiety all throughout your life, because your life is controlled by that debt now.
It's chaos.
It's chaos. And by the way, it demands order. It demands power to be applied to it. And you see this is the whole, they have multiple fronts on this fraud that they're perpetrating on the common people. And when you start viewing reality this way, it is like, it only leads one direction. You want to go all the way back to the source of that problem, because, and then, well, yeah, you carry it. Yeah, you carry that all forward. And what you get is, okay, I need to like actually start living a healthy lifestyle. Why? Because this is actually goes back to the Christian idea of love, that you love your neighbor as yourself, which means that you actually have to do good to your neighbor and do good to yourself at the same. And by the way, this is what the one statement that underlies all of capitalism, that I trade value for value and create more value. That's love your neighbor as yourself in one statement. That, wow. that because this is in fact what, in the Christian context of what we believe love actually is that it actually produces more of itself. It is self-propagating that way, that, you exchange good, you do good to other people, they do good to you, and you actually end up with more good than you started with. It's not a zero sum, it's a positive sum game that what you're supposed to be doing. So if you are a self, you are a soul. You are not a body, you are a soul. You need to be doing good to your body so your body can come back and do good to your soul. This is, because your physical health and your mental health are connected. You can't just say, oh, I have really low self-esteem, and that has nothing to do with the fact I weigh 300 pounds.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not that it goes one direction. It goes both directions. Like, you love yourself, by actually doing good things to yourself, not feeding yourself Fiat food, not going way into debt on Fiat currency, and buying hard currency, buying assets. You do this, by, actually getting married, or not late either, early, because you get to have a roommate that you get along really, really well with, and you like love. And you have two incomes that actually make your standard of living go up. This is such a basic thing that I don't understand why this isn't taught, that you need to get married in order to get wealthy. Because think about it, it's like, why would you have to, if you're paying for your rent all by yourself, you're not saving any money. You're going to have to go into debt. You're staying poor. You're staying anxious. That anxiety filters down, gets you fat, and which is a
never-ending cycle.
It is a never-ending cycle. And if you just, get married, that gets all of that out of the way. You have that emotional support. You have that physical support as well. You have that financial support as well. So like, why would you wait until like after college? Why would you wait until you're
Right.
30 to, get your life to get together? And why would you wait? It's like I have all of these. I have this, crippling anxiety, this financial stress, and I want to wait to apply the one solution that takes care of all of it until I've taken care of all of it by myself. You know what I mean? Yeah. That makes no sense. It's completely counter to all logic and all reason. But this is what our society, this is what our chaos-driven society teaches us, because this is what we get from the government schools. This is that wisdom of man, quote unquote, that is actually quite foolish and folly. Mm-hmm. It's full of folly.
Right. So this is why,
again, because the state wants a chaos. It wants chaos because that's what gives it power, and people are divided. That's easy. It's easier for them to rule over us when we're divided. When we're united, well, it's like now we're a tribe that can oppose them.
Mm-hmm. So I like that you brought up Tom Woods, because he's in what people would say is more of a social conservative. And I really, really like that a lot more libertarians are kind of coming around to this. And you kind of mentioned it as well. But I tell everybody that I'm a socially conservative libertarian, right? Mm-hmm. Because I see these leftist leaning people who are overweight, and it's free love for everybody. And I'm like, I don't want anything to do with
pink hair, cut their dicks off, all that stuff.
Right.
It doesn't work. And it's no, like with like the trannies and all that. It's like, it's no wonder that they, get to around 30, again, like around our age, and then they commit suicide at a 40% rate, because now they've woken up and they've realized that, oh, I've made a horrible mistake, and I'm never going to be able to get married. I'm never going to be able to find love. No one's going to love me. I'm going to die alone. And worse is that even if all of that is true, even if I somehow managed against all odds to, find love, because who wants to go through life alone? That's a horrible pain.
Right.
Even if they manage to do that, they can't procreate. They cannot create life with someone that they love.
Well, we're built for that.
You say, it's the highest biological imperative, and like to reproduce. It's like second only to have more, to push chaos out and keep order in. Like that's to eschew entropy is the number one view of a thing of life that you're supposed to do with life. Part of that is reproducing, but like that reproductive impulse is like second only to like get rid of entropy, get rid of chaos. And and now you've said that not only that because you've taken so much chaos into yourself, you've sterilized yourself, you no longer can be productive. And by the way, that's something, again, going back to that Christian view of love and that idea of, hey, I trade value for value and produce more value. I trade my love for my wife, for my wife's love. And guess what? We created a life, and our son's going to be born in 3 months ish. And because that's order, that's new life, that's love. And this is what we're supposed to be doing as humans. And now if you've done something you've made a grave mistake, that, because people encouraged you and they affirmed you and all that. And really you found out that all the people who you thought loved you lied to you, and all of the people who could have possibly really truly loved you for who you are, now they no longer can, and you can't produce anything with them. Even if they did, what's left for you in life? Well, that's why you get a 40%. That's why you get a 40% suicide rate for like trannies and all that. Right. And this is like I see this as like the apotheosis of everything wrong with liberalism, everything wrong with the left. It is culminated in this like transgender stuff, and this transhumanism as well, because all this does is create absolutely mentally ill people who are never who they like their best hope for them is just to end the pain. Like that's it. These are people who are going to go through life alone. And while I would wish that on my worst enemies, but it's like they did it to themselves. That's the worst part of it. Is like the right didn't do this to them. Like they did it to themselves. And the right, with the people they hated, the people they thought were trying to like oppress them and keep them down and all that. And, they weren't being affirming and all that. These are the people who were trying to help them, and they thought they were the enemy. And like, how it's like, I get I get it. I get why there's a 40% suicide rate there, right around that time where they start waking up to reality. And like, nobody loves them. None of them ever did. They all lied. All the people they thought loved them lied to them. So that wasn't love, because love has to be based on truth. And, and all the people who could potentially love them are just like, not anymore.
Right.
There's no hope.
So it's kind of funny that you mentioned right around our age, because I'm 27 and you're how old again?
29.
Okay. So yeah, you're a couple years older than me, but women kind of around this age start to, as they say, have their biological clocks start ticking, because they really want to have kids because they realize that time's kind of running out, right? Women are most sexually attractive when they're in their lower 20s. So what do they do normally, at least in today's day and age? They tend to kind of whore around. And it sounds like shit, but it is shitty, because you're using your youth, which is your greatest resource as a woman when you're younger, to, you should be using that to attract the best man that you could possibly get. So that way you can live a good life later on. And I was arguing with somebody about this the other day, because she said, oh, well, we should leave the Civil Rights Act alone, so that way pregnant women can't get fired, because if they're still able to do the job, then who cares? Well, what you don't understand is that if you're a pregnant woman, then you are now a liability to a company, because now you're going to be an employee that's going to be off for an extended period of time. And if they're willing to hire you and pay for you to be off for that time, that's great. But no business should have to do that. So it's you should make damn sure that whichever man you're letting between your legs knock you up is a good man, and he's going to take care of you. Once again, I plan to have kids with my fiance, and you better damn well bet that I'm going to be a responsible father when that time comes. Oh, yeah. So once again, if you are going to lay with another person and have a kid with this person, you better damn well vet that fucking person before you let them knock you up. I don't understand how that's like hard to understand.
Well, and it's not just that. It's like, how do you objectively prove that this was a decent person? Not like, you can't it's not like pure proof. Nothing perfectly works, but how could you know for a fact, okay, this isn't one of the really shitty ones? It's like, okay, so I can at least eliminate the bottom 40%. That and say that this guy, whoever he is, he's definitely at least in the top 60%. What would you do? Say, all right, I want to see a ring on the finger first.
Right.
It's
some kind of promise.
Well, it's like, now we have a contract. Now, by the way, this female chastity, it is a diminishing asset. It is an asset that diminishes in value across time, no matter what. And it also diminishes with every single use. And because this is another thing that they've been able to do through in the biological sciences, is prove that, hey, the female pair bonding mechanism, yes, humans have pair bonding mechanisms. For women, it only works the first 5 or 6 times. Yes. Or at least for the first 3 or 4 guys, and then it's basically null. And you have no more ability to pair bond.
Nobody talks about this. And there's a lot of science to back this up too. If you look up stats on it, once women get over about 5 people, the divorce rate it non-linearly continues to go up.
Oh yeah, no, it's exponential, and the same thing does not exist in men. It's not nearly the same. Whereas we do have it for when we have kids and we're bonding with them. Right. So by the 3rd or 4th kid, he's the redhead, I don't care. It's okay, by the 4th or 5th kid, that's where it's going to get the men, with the men are just not going to care anymore. But it's like we don't, when we're copulating with women, we don't have that same thing. So this is why men can kind of whore around and women can't. So is it something of a biological double standard? Yeah, but we didn't choose it. This is our biology. And so when you are a woman, and this is you have a real hardcore biological incentive, you should be obeying to gatekeep, real quick, real close. It's like, nobody can really force you to gatekeep, but you really, really ought to, because now you're giving away the goods for free. As it's like this is, and you need to look at this as a multi-million-dollar asset. Because,
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even if you're a kind of a so-so woman, and you don't have to put yourself in that category, you're still looking at high 8s, 800,000, low $900,000 asset that your chastity is worth.
Well, it's economics.
It's economics. And so, hey, the law of diminishing marginal utility, the more owners that something that even a house has had before it, or a car has had before it, or a pair of shoes has had before it, that really goes down the more users it's had before, rather than, based on its pristine condition. If you are like a top supermodel where you're really hot, you need to be looking at that as like an upper, upper 8, lower 9, figure asset that you are diminishing in value. It's like, every single time you need to be thinking to yourself, and you can just use those curves and say parabolically, okay, what's that pair bonding mechanism worth? After like the fourth or fifth one, a whole lot less than it was before.
Right.
Like that could have been easily, because again, like think about it, like from a billionaire man's perspective, what's your number one threat to your assets? Divorce. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's why they really don't want a woman with a fully impaired pair bonding mechanism.
Well, look, so look at like Jeff Bezos, right? Yep. Who became one of the richest women in the world? His ex-wife.
Exactly. No, the single richest woman in the world. Yeah. Because of that.
Exactly.
It's like, this is the number one threat. So if you want to just, if you want to, get your money's worth, it turns out the Catholics and the Christians who are saying that you should like wait till marriage and have abstinence and all that, really great advice.
Yeah.
and granted, you should be really, really, thorough in that. And perhaps you should like take your parents' advice when they say that's a good man and that one's not. Right. And when they say that guy's an asshole, he's just going to knock you up and leave you, take their advice. Yeah. They've been around the block. They know it.
And it's economics and it's chaos, right? So when you have this kind of free love, eventually that kind of comes back to bite you in the ass. And we have now social conventions essentially from the left that make women feel good. Oh, you're a single mom, you go, girl, right? You're a great woman, slay queen. Any man, he's not the dad that stepped in, he's the dad who stepped up, right? He's not the stepdad, he's the dad who stepped up. There's so many different social conventions set up to make women feel good,
to
and
affirm
even make
the
men
lie.
feel good, right? And make men feel good about stepping up to take care of another man's child, when really, if you're a man, you need to be doing all that you can to become the best man possible, so that way you can attract a good woman, and then you can invest in that asset and you can have a successful family. Right? Because women are looking for top tier men, or men that can ascend the dominance hierarchy, right? It's hierarchical, it's right wing, so they're looking for a man who's very top of the hierarchy or has a capability. And if you're not that guy, then you need to focus on becoming that guy before you go trying to get the $1 million asset, or else you get into your 30s and 40s and then you're settled. You have to sack up with.
And men are appreciating assets, which is like,
bingo.
Again, women are depreciating assets because theirs is basic. Their asset, their net worth, really their value, and on the sex market really is just based off of their their chastity and their beauty. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way, but it is. Right. And the also personality, that makes a big difference too. Yeah. Because if I can look at you nice, but I can't listen to you speak, forget it.
The ability to bear children too.
Yeah, because I have to raise a family with you, or else why am I doing all of this? Men, on the other hand, this is why we get a real difference in age, where women tend to like older men, is they can have that ability to pay more, and
they rose the dominance hierarchy.
Well, it's not just that, is that all when you see this you've probably noticed this at 27, that all of like the best men and the best women, they got married in their early 20s. So in other words, all of the best assets got off the market early. The best assets get picked first. So if you're waiting until 30 to really settle down, you're getting like the second hands. You're getting a much lower quality to choose from,
and you're no longer top of the market.
Yup. And so, this does not work out well for you. So and it only works for so, and again, it's like, as a man, you need to be married like 27, 28. This is like, you really need to be like making this a number one priority for you right around this age. And for women, that age really needs to be like 21, 22. Mm-hmm. And it's not fair, but it is what it is. Because this is when you're going to get the best bang for your buck.
Exactly. And see, no one in Libertarian ever talks about this. And this
Nope.
is kind of more important than political stuff, because how can you affect
This
the
leads
outside
to the
world?
political stuff, as we've established
Exactly.
through archotropism. This is what leads to the political stuff. The battles. It's like when you're fighting it in Congress, you are at the very last. You are at the end of the process, and at that point, it's basically a given. You have no more control over it anymore because you let it get there instead of fighting the battle, on the front line of the culture war where it needed to be fought 30 years ago. it's like now it's gotten to the point where it's a political problem that requires force, and there's no good way around. And by the way, and now there's no good answer because you let the problem fester, you let the problem grow, and now there's no good solution. You have two choices: evil and less evil, and you're basically your choices are more damage and damage control. It's like there's no like prosperity here. There's I'm sorry if that's a black pill for you. There is no good option. It's like this is why I'm part of the GOP. I'm not voting for. I'm not saying Mitch McConnell. Yeah, it's like no, not that guy. It's like Marjorie Taylor Greene. And Matt Gaetz and Tho Bishop, and who hopefully will run. I'm hoping, but these are the sorts of people that as a GOP member, I want to support. Why? Because they hold the Mitch McConnells to the feet to the fire. It's like I expect. It's like. And it's like, when everyone's like, oh, you like supporting warmongers and Death Fantas and all that. I'm like, fuck you. It's like, I don't care about the McConnells. I regard them as like the enemy because, if I ignore them, they're going to, I know for a fact they're going to do something bad. It's like that. And whereas if I have even just someone that, to as a point of comparison, like a Thomas Massey or Rand Paul, all they do, their main value is to be a point of comparison. It's ditto Marjorie Taylor Greene, ditto Laura Boebert, and all of the Matt Gaetz. Their primary value is that now Americans can look at their own right-wing GOP guys and say, why do you suck so much? Ditto DeSantis. This like all it takes is one good governor. All it takes is one good Ron Paul as a point of comparison to where people say, it didn't have to be this way. It's like, why can't you be more like this, DeSantis, and Abbott got this really badly where it's like, why are you always like 3 to 5 weeks behind DeSantis? It's like, why? This is embarrassing. We're Texas. Why can't you be better?
We're supposed to be as America gets.
Exactly. And ditto all of the other 23 right-wing trifectas. It's like having one DeSantis changes the entire game because now everybody has to be better because there's a point of comparison. That's why it's a very, very asymmetric value prospect to where all we have to do is really get like one Anthony Sabatini in there, and all of a sudden he can turn the entire state legislature of Florida on its head because he's there as a point of comparison, and he's there to actually. So by the way, he's from my home district. Where I was born. He and I were born and raised about 3 years apart and about 10 miles apart. 3 years and 10 miles apart. Never knew each other, but. But I'm like, wow, Lake County, Florida really produced two really hardcore radicals. Great job, Lake County.
Nice, hell yeah. So I'm kind of glad you brought it back to Ron Paul because people wouldn't initially think of him as right wing because he's very anti-war, right? Because back then it was
he's right wing,
right? But that's what I'm getting at is that he embodies right wing because look, he's been married to his wife for what, like 60 years?
Yeah.
And he had like 5 kids, and one of them turned out to be one of the best senators in history.
Yeah.
He embodies what's good about
right wing, promoting hierarchy, promoting order. That's right wing.
Exactly. So, dude, we've been going back and forth for about an hour now. I want to be.
I can go for another 20 minutes if you want.
I'm gonna get headed to bed, but we will have to do this again. This was an awesome conversation. I got a few questions to ask my guests before we get off. Andrew, what does liberty look like to you?
A liberty is the ability to choose the good without fear of punishment, or really without fear of constraint. The ability to choose the good, because if you're definitionally, if you are choosing the bad, you're choosing the chaos. you will lose your liberty. So there, definitionally, there is no liberty in libertinism. There is no liberty in license. And these are things that are definitionally destructive to liberty because of archotropism. So, it's like when you say like, okay, like we have that 4-quadrant view of, it's like, okay, authoritarian on top, right and left, and libertarian on the bottom. Really, everything but like the bottom right corner is not compatible with, liberty. And actually, if you want to do it, is that, if you're starting on the chaos left, which is where we are now, it's like what you need to do is first apply force. So you need to be top right, not bottom right. Bottom right is the result of applying top right. So when you're, applying monarchy, you're applying, which means something different to me than it does to other people. We won't get into that today. But when you're applying force to chaos, you get order. That's how you get the bottom right, which is the only, compatible. That is the only quadrant that is actually compatible with, right wing Ron Paul liberty. The others that, all that other stuff, all that left wing liberty is a contradiction in terms. It does not exist. It is a fraud, and this is how the left again helps the state at the top perpetrate the fraud. That those left libertarians, they're state allies.
Wow.
Even if they don't want to be.
Yeah, I totally see it, because what do you see with Reason and Cato? Constantly justifying the regime. All right, so the other question, then we'll do plugs. What does health look like to you?
Ooh, that's a much better question. Health looks like, to me, like this is the way your body is supposed to work. That it looks like I have muscle mass, I have low fat, I have youth, I have function. That would be the number one thing. Is I would say, I would call it function, because your age is not a number. Your age is in function, because you can be like my grandfather is 93 and extremely sharp. He drives himself around, he lives independently, and he's very mentally there, and he's not slowing down. He's slowing down a little bit, but not really. And his health is great. And whereas you have other people who at like 77 are just like, and they, and you have like Joe Biden, who looks like, he's 80, decrepit. But he looks like he's like on death's doorstep. I don't know what they're giving him. I mean, that adrenochrome is really like, it must really work. But, but that he looks like he's 100. He's 80. He looks like he's 100. My grandfather, he looks like he looks about 90, but he has the health of most people in their 70s, because I would say health is function, not a number, it's not so much form as it is function. So it's, if you want to have function, that's why, again, I do have it. Perfect. The Phoenix Protocol by August Dunning, the dry fasting and for rapid healing and radical life extension, because they've done a whole lot of, studies on dry fasting particularly, and they've shown how this can actually restore a lot of lost functionality and physically make your DNA younger. Like you can actually do a DNA test before and after a dry fast, and you can show how your DNA is actually genetically younger after the fast. And so you actually will get like your sense of smell back and stuff like that if you're older, because of dry fasting. And so when I say, so health really, and this is like a point that they make in the book repeatedly, when they're going to the sciences, that age and health really is function, not a number. So because you can have not functional and not immortality, but very high life extension by extending the functional life of your body, but through fasting, through getting rid of the chaos. And that I would say health is function. And you made me think about that one. That was very good.
Yeah, I try to pop those a little bit unexpected, just to kind of see what people's first assumptions are. Real quick before we do plugs, longest fast I ever did was 133 hours, and I ran 12 miles and worked out every single day of the fast. And by
fast?
Yeah, it was on water.
Yeah, okay.
Water, electrolytes, and coffee. And then by the time I got to day 5, I still wasn't hungry. It was crazy. I have pictures of before and after. It's pretty crazy, but I felt fantastic the entire time. I don't do any of that anymore just because my goals are a little bit different than what they once were, but I'll probably return to that eventually. But yeah. Andrew, where can everybody find you, and what else do you got going on in the near future?
In the near future, I'll be putting together a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to be giving a explanation of what, why this war in Ukraine is happening, what, that some of the history behind it, correcting some of the record on some libertarian dogma is just not true. And I'm going to be, talking about the economic consequences of it and how fucking screwed we are. Because boy, is it's going to get bad. I'm expecting like food shortages in Q4, not necessarily in America, but definitely in the Middle East. And when there's food shortages in the Middle East, well, okay, you know what happens there. That was how we got the Arab Spring. Was we had a minor food shortage in a few countries because Russia couldn't export wheat, because Russia is the #1 exporter of food to the Middle East. And when Biden just cut all of that off, by cutting them off from the US dollar, okay, well, now we're going to have food shortages in the Middle East, and by who puts out most of the oil, so we're going to have an energy shortage too globally.
So they hate us for freedom though, right? It must be their religion.
Yeah. And so now we're going to have all of these social problems that are caused by this. And I'm going to be going into what are all of the knock-on effects of what's going to happen from this war, and how I'm preparing for it. Is another thing is, how I'm investing my money in order to make money off of the chaos, because, archotropism. And, how am I preparing for my own, well-being in my family? Because I have a son that's going to be born in 3 months and a very, very pregnant wife. And how am I preparing for all of that? This will all be in that presentation. And you can find that on my channel at Popular Liberty on YouTube. You can also find me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Popular Liberty _. And, that's, also a great place to find me.
Cool. Well, I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Love to have you back sometime so we can kind of hit on some of the other topics we can get to hit on, because there were a ton of stuff I wanted to hit on, but I just, dude, we'll definitely do it again, and maybe bring in a few other people. So this is a really, really cool discussion. I'm glad we got to have it. So if you got anything else, then go ahead, plug it. And if not, we'll get out of here.
Nope. That's it. Thank you for having me on, Kyle.
Of course, man. I appreciate it. So thanks everybody for listening. Don't forget, get your supplements. If you need any protein powders, pre-workouts, axandsledge.com, use code Matovcik10, MATOVCIK10 at checkout. Let them know I sent you, get a little discount. And make sure you like, subscribe, rate me 5 stars if you can. It goes a long way. I really appreciate it. I never tell people to do that because I'm a friggin' idiot. And until next time, everybody,
like and subscribe.
Yeah, take care, guys.